Today we've had a national tragedy. Two airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
God.
Oh my God.
That looks like a second plane.
Has
I
just
did not see a plane go in. That just exploded.
We just saw another plane coming in from the side. So this looks like it is some sort of a concerted effort to attack the World Trade Center that is underway.
After the attacks of 9/11 in September of 2001, it had become clear that the security of America needed to be strengthened. The USA PATRIOT Act was signed into law on October 26, 2001, by President George W. Bush. The title is an acronym that stands for Uniting and Strengthening America by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism. This act primarily focuses on reinforcing the collection of weapons and military equipment available to the CIA, FBI, and the federal government in order to identify and end terrorist networks both in and out of the United States. Immediately following the attacks of 9/11, Congress started work on several proposed bills to address terrorism. Republican Congressman Jim Sensenbrenner introduced the bill to the House, where it was passed as the USA PATRIOT Act, after review primarily by the House Committee on the Judiciary. It was then passed on to the Senate, where numerous amendments were proposed by Senator Russ Feingold, few of which were passed. Feingold was also the only senator to vote against the bill.
Terror crime, things like that. The problem is, though, as I read the bill, worked with the ACLU and other members of Congress, is that we saw that essentially they stuffed in the bill what Robert Novak called, a very conservative columnist, called at the time an old wish list of the FBI. Things that never would have passed in pre-9/11. Being able to get your library records, even though you did absolutely nothing wrong. Being able to enter your home when you're on vacation for a so-called sneak and peek search, and not have the government tell you they were there for quite some time. In fact, they stuffed that in there and they used it all right, but not once for several years for a terrorism investigation.
President George W. Bush strongly supported the bill and signed it immediately. He later passionately spoke to push for reauthorization of the act.
Law allows our intelligence and law enforcement officials to continue to share information. It allows them to continue to use tools against terrorists that they use against drug dealers and other criminals. It'll improve our nation's security while we safeguard the civil liberties of our people. The legislation strengthens the Justice Department so it can better detect and disrupt terrorist threats. And the bill gives law enforcement new tools to combat threats to our citizens, from international terrorists to local drug dealers. It is an important piece of legislation, and I thank those here who helped get it passed.
Through this act, funding for terrorist investigation was dramatically increased. Banks have a system in which they can verify the identity of account holders to prevent money laundering. A tripling of the number of Border Patrol personnel, Customs personnel, and immigration inspectors was authorized. The Attorney General gained the authority to declare an alien a terrorist on reasonable grounds. Numerous benefits were created for the victims of terrorism, and more. The USA PATRIOT Act was passed very quickly in an attempt to make changes to protect America, even though extreme controversy remained around the legislation. In the decade following the passage of the act, controversy has remained constant. Concerns continue to rise about whether the law goes too far by collecting too much data and violating the right to privacy of the American people.
It's a shame. We had someone like George Bush that came into power that thought he could just tear up parts of our Constitution.
The whole privacy and the wiretaps and them not having to have a warrant. I mean, it's a total violation of our privacy.
They had all this on the shelf somewhere, ideas of things they would like to do. And they got 9/11 and they said, it's our chance. Go for it.
We were so frightened by 9/11 that it just flew through here. There weren't enough copies to be read. There was one copy at the time. No senator read the Patriot Act. It didn't go through the standard procedure. And look at what's happening now. The thing is with the Patriot Act is that it's so emotional, because anyone who stands up like myself and says we need to have protections for our people, that we shouldn't sift through every gun owner in America through their records, looking and just trolling through records. Interestingly, we have looked at 28 million electronic records when the Inspector General looked at this. 28 million electronic records. We've looked at 1,600,000 texts. Now, if you said to me, well, they asked a judge and they thought these were terrorists, I don't have a problem. Judge gives them a warrant and they look at these text messages or electronic records. But do you want them trolling through your Facebook? Do you want them trolling through your emails? Do you want a government that is unrestrained by law?
Due to this controversy, numerous bills, none of which were passed, were proposed to amend the USA Patriot Act. These included the Protecting the Rights of Individuals Act, the Benjamin Franklin True Patriot Act, and the Security and Freedom Insured Act. On May 26, 2011, President Barack Obama signed the Patriot Sunsets and Extension Act of 2011, a 4-year extension of 3 key provisions in the USA Patriot Act: roving wiretaps, searches of business records, and conducting surveillance of individuals suspected of terrorist-related activities. The USA Patriot Act remains America's primary legislation regarding the defense of America and the prevention of terrorism today.